Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Have we started?
On
If we have, I can't hear a thing.
Well, that's what I was about to say. On the YouTube link, I'm seeing the members around the table, but I just saw you, and I only had a picture of Mims as well, so I don't see the meat area on YouTube. I just see you guys.
I don't think we got a quorum yet. I don't know.
Does somebody want to text Leanne or Chairman?
I did. She said they haven't started yet.
Oh, okay. I went down there and they told me I had to leave. Go to your office.
Dang, I didn't know that was an option.
I was hoping. I'd much rather be there in person than be Zooming it.
And see, I just thought it was an ugly thing. I thought they was running me off because of my looks.
No, the ugly one gets, I can hear him. It's a good looking guy I can't hear.
Uh-oh. All right, I'm going on mute.
Beckett, Beckett, can you hear? If you can, wave your hand or speak. Beckett? No, Beckett can hear. Bounds, do you have a question? Gentleman from the show. Okay. If there's no questions, what is your recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is title sufficient do pass.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. I say House Bill 212 is passed. Next item on the agenda will be House Bill 307. I recognize a gentleman from Pike to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. House Bill 307 is dealing with the medical marijuana that was passed this past year in the election. The Department of Health is going to lead on this. They're going to follow the law, and they're going to run this program as most efficiently and effective as possible. They do need some help by doing this, and so they're asking that we pass House Bill 307. Currently, Section 27-104-203 will not allow them to pay other state agencies based on the legislation that was passed several years ago. So this will allow them to contract with other agencies to make sure they run this program again as best as possibly. Representative Bumgar has signed on this as well because he also wants this run as best as possible. So that is the explanation of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
You've heard the gentleman's explanation. Are there any questions of the gentleman on this piece of legislation?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the gentleman.
Recognize the gentleman from Lauderdale, Mr. Young, for question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Mims, with regard to this particular piece of legislation, in the bill that was presented for the medical marijuana, they had a tax creation that was supposed to have been a funding source for the medical marijuana initiative. Where is this money coming from? Is it coming from the tax source, or is it being supplied by the state?
Now, gentlemen, the amendment that was passed will fund the whole program, is my understanding. And so there is another piece of legislation that deals with taxes that they are requesting that is in Ways and Means on the House side and is in the Finance Committee on the Senate side. So basically what we're doing here is just allowing them to enter contracts with other agencies to pay for fees, to pay for such as maybe the agency Department of Agriculture, Department of Revenue. So this is what this legislation is doing. There is the other bill that will deal with
Right.
taxes.
I don't have a problem creating a money stream for them to be able to spend. But my question is, what is the source for the money stream? Is it coming from the tax that's supposed to be created for the medical, or is the state going to front them some money? You follow me?
Well, yes or no. We may have to ask council, or Mr. Chairman may can weigh in, but I do not believe, based on, now again, I'm not the expert on the on the 65 that was passed, but it's my understanding that the state is not involved in any part of that amendment. And so I think initially, I don't believe the state will give any type of seed money, but I believe the program will fund itself.
Okay.
Again,
Gentlemen,
the state,
Gentleman from Pike, Jim Lawler, I'm gonna let council, speak on this, where it's gonna come, how it's set up, if it's okay with y'all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I recognize the gentleman, Mr. Ronnie Frith, for, comments on this.
Okay, Initiative 65 has created the medical marijuana program, and it is designed, and the language itself makes it a self-contained program. It says that it will come from fees charged to the, by the medical marijuana treatment centers. There's one other license fee, I've forgotten what that is now, but the main one, Charles, is the one from the, it's really like a mirror of a sales tax. The health department can charge up to the amount of the sales tax on the sales of medical marijuana. And I think what your question is, I get it, is what are they going to use to pay these fees to these other agencies as this bill would authorize?
Yes, sir.
The way I understand it, and I imagine they would see it the same way at the health department, is they can't spend any of their other appropriated money for that. It has to be money that's in this self-contained, self-funded program. The initiative itself authorizes, I think it's a line of credit up to how much, Leanne?
I think it was $6 million, and that was my question.
Several $1 million. Anyway, I would imagine they would get it from that initially until they start getting some revenue from these fees and the tax. Obviously, those are not going to come in, get any of that until next year.
Right, that's correct.
They have a deadline of August, I believe. Regulations have to be done by July, and August 15th, they have to start issuing licenses. So they won't have a source of revenue till then, unless they get it well ahead of the deadline. So
thank you, Mr. Turner. That was my question, is if they don't have a source of revenue until after, they have, invoked the rules and regulations, and after they've started creating, revenue streams, then how are we going to pay for any and all expenditures up until that point? So I understand the gentleman's bill, and I'm in favor of the bill. My question was just, where is the money going to come from? Which pot? Thank you.
yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Gentleman from Pike, are there any other questions on this piece of legislation?
I believe the gentleman from Neshoba has a question, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Neshoba, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how to do the little hand thing. Somebody gonna have to show me. Look, Mr. Chairman, let me ask you this. So these funds, will they be shared jointly with anyone else? Jointly?
Gentlemen, I don't believe so. No, sir.
There's a million comedians out of work. We got one from the show over here. Hey, any other questions on this piece of legislation? Gentleman from Pike, what's your recommendation?
Yes, sir. Title sufficient, do pass.
Okay, have they heard?
Yeah, they heard 307.
Okay, 307, you say title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it, it passed. I understand that we're having some technical difficulties, and I'm going to go back up to House Bill 211. Recognize the gentleman from Montgomery, Vice Chairman, to explain the bill. And let us know if you hear. We were under the assumption everybody could hear. So he will explain House Bill 211 again. Thank you.
Can someone give me a thumbs up just to let me know y'all are hearing me? Okay, thank you. House Bill 211, this bill returns the Mississippi Insurance Department back to special fund agency, and it removes them from the provisions of the Mississippi Budget Transparency and Simplification Act and state general fund support. And if you would follow, if you've overlooked this bill, section 2, line 54 through section 19, ending in line 880, these lines are amended to provide deletion from general fund appropriation. And there's a committee sub, and the committee sub just basically adds on line 125. Y'all, let me get to it. On line 125 through 128, at the end of fiscal year 2022 and each fiscal year thereafter, all unexpended amounts remaining in the insurance department fund above the sum of $500,000 shall lapse into the state general fund. That is the committee sub and an explanation of the bill, and I yield for any questions.
Are there any questions for the gentleman on this piece of legislation?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I have one question.
Joe from Lauderdale, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what we're in effect doing is creating legislation that says once the account balance reaches $500,000, then we automatically sweeping that account.
No.
It goes to the insurance, goes to the.
How it'll go.
I thought we said that the money was going to automatically move to the general fund.
To the year, the money, everything sweeps to the general fund and they have $500,000 for cash.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
Did that answer your question, gentlemen?
Yes, the lady confirmed what I just stated. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are there any other questions on this piece of legislation? What's your recommendation, sir?
Title sufficient, due pass, committee sub.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Next, let's go to House Bill 212. Recognize the gentleman from Montgomery, the Vice Chairman, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill basically does the same thing. House Bill 212 removes the state fire marshal and the State Fire Academy from the provisions of the Mississippi Budget Transparency and Simplification Act, changing the funding program from general fund support to special fund agency. Sections 1 through 4 deletes the provisions that require general fund appropriations. This goes into effect in July, and that's an explanation of the bill.
You heard the gentleman. Are there any questions for the gentleman pertaining to the fire marshal bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have the same question. We're doing an automatic
Recognize,
sweep.
gentleman.
Thank you. We're doing an automatic sweep on the account. And from an accounting standpoint, are we sweeping all of the funds or are we sweeping to the $500,000? You follow me? Are we
Yes, sir.
zeroing the account balance or are we going to only take monies down to the 500,000?
There's no money, that amount of money. They will not have the same amount of money in their account at the end of the fiscal year. So that they're not in part of that. If you want to refer to it as a sweep, anything above 500,000, their revenue or their monies at the end of the year are not going to total that amount.
Right. Well, my question is, are we just going to leave the agencies in both of these pieces of legislation with a zero account balance? Or are we going to reduce their balances and they will have some working monies that are available?
The first agency will have $500,000 left in their account at the end of the fiscal year. It will not affect the fire marshals or the State Fire Academy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What is your recommendation, sir?
Title sufficient, due pass.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Next, I go to House Bill 750, and I recognize the gentleman from Harrison, Mr. Bennett, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the Secretary of State is what we're doing here is we're allowing him, and I'll read the title here real quick. The Secretary of State may, in writing, file with his or her office, designate a Deputy Secretary of State to perform any duties and powers conferred on the Secretary of State and to serve as his or her place on a non-constitutional board of commission for a particular meeting or series of called or regular meetings. And on such board of commissions, the Deputy Secretary of State votes, decisions, and signatures thereon shall have the full force and effect and shall be legally binding on the state of Mississippi as if the Secretary of State had personally participated in such a meeting. Simply as what we're doing here is we're giving him to the authority to designate one of his deputies in case there's a hurricane on the coast or a tornado in North Mississippi or something, that they can sit in and vote for him when he's dealing with other duties in the state of Mississippi. We already do this for the Attorney General. All it is giving him the authority to send a designate in his place and allow them to vote for him. And if there's no questions, my motion is title sufficient, do pass.
You've heard it. Are there any questions for the gentleman? Gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hines, you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, how does this impact his budget? Are those people receiving a pay raise, or are they creating new pen slots?
No, it's just giving them authority to vote for him. That's all it does.
Yeah, there's no money. There's no pay raise in that. Gentleman from Lauderdale, Mr. Young, you have a question? Kenny?
No, sir, I don't have a question. I didn't lower my hand.
Okay.
I just lowered it. I apologize.
No apology accepted. Are there any other questions on this piece of legislation? And Mr. Bennett, what was your recommendation?
Title sufficient, do pass.
You heard the recommendation. All in favor say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, sir. Next item would be House Bill 1177. We're going to skip. Next item we'll take up will be House Bill 1256. Recognize the gentleman from Calhoun, Mr. Beckett, to handle the bill.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes. Got you.
All right. House Bill 1256 is the bill for the state auditor. It's to increase the fee for the audit that he performs on an annual basis. The counties have to have an audit done. And right now, the auditor is doing one about every third or fourth year. And it's because of manpower, really. And the other years, they contract with a private company. And currently, they're allowed to charge $35 an hour for the work that's being done. After consultation, the auditors had a consultation with supervisors in their association and different individuals. This bill would increase that $35 to $50 and would allow them to hire additional personnel. And hopefully they can the county can perform the audits on a more regular basis and not have to hire these outside sources. And it's their estimation that even though using the current number of hours, that this should generate around $438,000 extra dollars to hire this personnel, but it shouldn't really cost the counties any more money. That's their anticipation, because even at the $50 an hour, they will be performing the audits cheaper than they can get them done otherwise. So this additional money will allow them to take on a larger workload, and they still won't perform near all the audits, but they'll be able to do it on a more regular basis. And over time, it should not cost the counties any more money, and the state would be able to do the audits on a more routine basis. And this would not affect the municipalities. They don't audit them. This is the counties, and they have spoken with their groups. Be happy to answer any questions.
The gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hines, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
You recognize.
Chairman Beckett, what happens if, the county
Yes.
is, can't afford that increase? Like, there's about 4 or 5 really small counties that, you know, that might end up being an issue for them. Go on.
Well, currently, if they're not, if we don't get this increase, they're having to, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, I'm having some internet troubles. If you cannot, if we don't get this increase right now, they're only doing the audits like every 4th time, and they're having to, these counties are having to contract with private companies, private audit firms that are charging them far more than what the auditor charges.